You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 446. Our breakdown discussion of Andor, episode 4, named called Aldhani. And for an episode that was a pretty good length, 45 minutes, we had a lot of content that was thrown at us, and give just Star Wars the way I think we like it. So, and speaking of someone who delivers on that promise every week, Jonesy's with us. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing a little better than you sound tonight, my friend.
I am going through my fourth puberty this season, and it's really kicking my butt. So I know I'm all joking. I got some crap in my throat, and I'm sick again. So, but can't not do this show. So I'm going to apologize for the squeaks and everything else. So,
oh yeah, no worries. Hey, let's get right into it then. So, huge thanks to our Patreon members. We actually had a new level up this week. Eugene Bird decided to join we can no longer call it the Rod tier. We're going to have to call it the Rod and Eugene tier, or the U-Rod tier. I don't know. We got to come up with some of their name. It's the Delusions of Grandeur tier. Eugene, welcome to the club. Thank you so much for upgrading your membership. We hope you appreciate it. We look forward to reaching out to you here pretty soon. And again, are now part of the tribe members: Mike, Kathy, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, and Jackson now as well. And then we've actually got a pretty hip crowd. I like how I said that hip. I'm working on my lingo here. In the live chat tonight, if you listen to the podcast, you know that we have a live stream as well. CantinaCast.com/YouTube. Steph, Dale, Jonathan, Rob, Kathy, Sky, Dante, some folks in the background. I know you're out there. Oh, Eugene's there too. So thank you guys and gals so much for coming out. Apologize for the late start here, but we will make up for it with 17 hours of content tonight as we get through episode 4 of Andor. But no, yeah, seriously, thanks everyone for coming out and visiting the show. We had a little bit of news this week, but it was this week in Star Wars had a couple things. We have a new intro for the High Republic, which was a bit exciting. Did you get a chance to take a look at that during the show?
Yeah, I did. I got to see that, and I got to see well, I don't want to spoil your thunder. Your thunder, but yeah. No, they had we haven't had one of these, the High Republic shorts, those little animated things in a while.
Yeah. And
I was like, whoa, this is so cool because Path of Deceit comes out next week. I think it comes out officially on Tuesday.
Right.
Boy, that sounded fun. On Tuesday, Path of Deceit comes out, which I recommend. We'll have to talk about this at some point. I don't know when, but I recommend the book. I've had a chance to finish it. It's got some great stuff in there. It really gets you enticed and set up for phase 2 in a lot of cool ways. But the animated piece of it is pulled directly from that. So awesome. It wouldn't say it's not spoilers. I mean, it's kind of stuff that they get out at the very beginning.
Right.
But it definitely is kind of cool just to see those and to know that we've got more of those coming, because I really enjoyed those. I feel like they didn't do enough, honestly, in the first phase. Like, we had some pretty good characters that were done, but there were a lot that were just missing, in my opinion. But
yeah, exactly. And Kristen Baver in This Week in Star Wars said that we do have another trailer, a video animated trailer coming. And so that sounds like that might be coming as soon as next week as well, maybe with the release of the book, the official release of the book. So that's pretty exciting, because I'm with you. I think those are really great. They're great primers. Really great to get you introduced to these characters that we don't know anything about now, because we're starting over for the most part. But to get a little flavor for hyperspace and some of that journey where we thought we were in High Republic, we are, of course, 150 years before where we were at previously. And now we really get to see what exploration of hyperspace actually looks like. At least that's what they're teasing us. And some pretty interesting and exciting things, I think, coming in. And early praise on the books. All 3 of them that have been released, early copies, have been very, very positive. So I'm excited to hear more of what you think once you feel a little better and able to share a little more robustly with me.
Well, we've got to figure out when we're going to break that down too.
We got a pack slate, man. We got a pack slate for the rest of the year. It's pretty crazy.
We really do. So yeah, all good things there. Let's see. Was there anything else that came out newsworthy? That's pretty much it.
Yeah, just a few small things here and there, but I think given how your voice is doing, let's kick into this thing before we lose you all the way.
Yeah. All right. All right, well, let's talk about episode 4. And excuse me, let's I kind of want to get your initial thoughts. Like, what did you think about the episode? Uh Especially the way the last episode ended, and as we transition into this one, what did you think?
I love this episode actually quite a bit. And again, I come each week, I'm probably going to go back to what did I think was going to be success or failure? Because I think that's just, we'll keep tabs on this throughout as we go. And we've talked about the gritty, the really lived in, does it feel like the rebellion is dirty and all of those things? And yeah, they're hitting that with spades. But the question we had going into this week was, okay, when are we going to get the true politics side of things? And is that going to be what weighs the show down? Or is that going to really be that next gear, or that special something that really makes it special? And oh my gosh, I got so excited because I think our early impressions with Mon Mothma, hey, Genevieve, I've got a crush on Genevieve O'Reilly. I'm not even going to lie. I'm just staring at her. I'm like, oh, she's so pretty, but she's just so cool, and, but man, her and Luthen, fantastic interaction. I love the transition with Luthen. What's going on with the ISB, which we were right about. So that's kind of cool to say we were right about something. We get it right every once in a while. The politics and what's going on in the ISB is pure Empire, both good and the bad, if you will, in that respect of what we expect the Empire to be with a bunch of infighting, but also the ruthlessness of the Empire and the clawing and everything else that they have internally. And so I think we're getting this really good play. And I think right now that's starting to hit those notes. I really, really liked this episode and that dichotomy of Andor out in the field and Mon Mothma and Luthen, playing in the arena, the authority arena. And as the Empire starts to suspect something is going on with this rebellion and not everybody believes it, it's really, it is building something really interesting and really exciting. And I'm really looking forward to it. And this was my favorite episode so far. I mean, we're only 4 episodes in, but I'm really happy about the trajectory we're on. So what about you? What's your early impressions?
Well, the other thing that I think we kind of nailed or called was the funding of the war. We said in order for there to be a war, you've got to have deep pocketbooks. Somebody's got to fund this thing, in real life. And there's no exception made here in Star Wars. And so I thought the character of Luthen was kind of a standout piece for me, like beginning to end, right? And we'll get into that in a minute, especially when he, converts into his alter ego. But the idea that he has so much money, and we kind of see where that money's coming from, but it sounds like he's funding this thing on his own, right? And there's a whole dialogue. They have a whole conversation about the funding of it, but credits are an important aspect of this war. And, it's just kind of cool to see him in that role. Like he's filling a role that, when we think about the rebellion, we always think about like the Leias and the Organas, but we never really got the background into the infrastructure piece of it, and we're starting to see some of that. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've always said I like my Star Wars politics, like I like my coffee, lots of cream, lots of sugar. So I'm not a huge politics person, but I can say that this stuff has me gripped. Like it is gripping for me and is very, very interesting. And they're dropping names of characters from episode 1 or from the prequel trilogy that I'm excited about seeing now. And the dynamics.
I squealed when Sly Moore's name came up.
Yeah, I was gonna. We'll talk about her in a little bit because she's kind of creepy and cool looking and all that. But yeah, I mean, so it's just this intricate web of politics and espionage, and there's gonna be some double crossing going on here. It's all very good stuff and all the stuff that we'd expect from somebody like Tony Gilroy. So from that perspective, I think it was really great. I think what I'm really liking the most about this series so far, it is a very character-driven series.
Yeah. And
that's not to take anything away from the stuff that's come before it, but, there are times in the other shows where it's all about the flash. It's all about the CG and the throwback special effects and playing with action figures. And this is characters focused first. And we got that message from Gilroy. We got it from Diego Luna when they were on the press tour prior to the release, saying that this was going to be about characters, real world experiences, real world scenarios. And we're seeing that time and time again. And so the idea that these characters are this deep, you know what I mean? Like 3-4 episodes in when they really haven't had a whole lot of screen time is fascinating, because in my head, it feels like we are going to just get further and further. And I think it's going to I use this word a lot, but recontextualize, especially somebody like Mon Mothma's character. I mean, we all love her from the prequel trilogy. We all love her from the sequel trilogy, right? But did we really get to know her? No. And you think about the level that we get to know her now. I mean, we know who her husband is now. We know what that relationship's like. We know they probably sleep in separate beds and, don't say a whole lot in the morning outside of making their coffee and going to work, right? So it's just things like that that really kind of flesh out that world that people like me just love to eat up in terms of that, layer upon layer upon layer of trivia and character dimensions and depth. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's all good stuff.
We're off on a really good foot. A really, really good foot. I'm really excited about where we're at. What do you think about Karn? I mean, he was very much an afterthought in this episode, but was that awkward for you in any kind of way?
It was probably from a narrative perspective. I think it's great because it's like they're laying that thread down. Like he's not. If you think about it, we got so little from him, and the little that we got was probably no one expected that we would see Karn's mom, and that Karn would slap him. And that is the talking point now, right? We're going to be talking about, tonight, we're going to speculate on what the heck's going on there. But again, it's just more that everyday life of people in Star Wars and that the depth of the characters being fleshed out even more. Now, does it have any weight? Will it have any bearing on the galaxy? Probably not at the end of the day. But these small things like that do have will probably have big changes or big impacts to the future down the road. They're not going to just throw in, oh, mom hates him and slaps him, and then he moves on and we never hear back from her, right? Something about that. There's a reason why Gilroy put that in there, and that's his brother that wrote this one, I think. Was it Dan Gilroy?
Yeah, I believe so.
So yeah, there's a reason why he put that scene in there. So again, it's just stuff like that. I love that stuff. I would never expected to have seen that, or, well, I won't get into the Easter eggs, but like a Ricotta reference, there's just all kinds of great stuff in here that were written in here with the dialogue.
Yeah, it was really dense with the visuals as well, and some of the name dropping and the lore aspect of things.
So we'll get into the Easter eggs, and we're not going to, I mean, there's plenty of people out there that do really great jobs of breaking these down. So go follow those guys and follow and see their Easter egg videos. I do want to talk about some of them in a little bit. But we went in, I just like that we got some, and it wasn't in your face, right? It makes sense given where Luthen is and what he does, that we would see a lot of those Easter eggs. There were a couple that were scattered in outside of that, like the Ricotta reference, and we'll talk about those. So that's a good thing. I think the only, I got two things that I want to ask you about. Number one, the ending. It just and again, it's not, I'm not dumping on the ending. It's just weird. The first episode ended like this, and we talked about it. We were kind of chatting back and forth in Discord, mentioning this, and I get it. I mean, it's, on some levels, I feel like they need to break this up, right? And when they get to that 45-minute mark, they're looking around at the script and saying, okay, in this 10, 15-minute section right before the end, or before the next story ends, and, before the last story stops, or the first story ends, or the current story ends and the next story starts.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, where does it make sense to cut? Where does it make sense to transition into the next episode? And there may not always be clear, very clear delineated lines of where the story needs to pick up. And so some of that's probably it.
Yeah.
Some of it, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but Disney wants to have 12 episodes. They want to extend this out. And so as a writer, they come in, they just write the script. Now they got to figure out, okay, how do we turn this into 12 episodes? So that's why I think we see some that are 30 minutes long, 37 minutes. There's no consistency, right? It's not like national, broadcast television, like NBC, ABC shows where, you're going to have 40 minutes of content, 20 minutes of commercials in there, or whatever it is, whatever the numbers are, Yep. This is a little bit different. So where they slice and dice this is always odd. It's always peculiar. This one probably more than anything, because when it ended, I thought, what the heck? It's over? Okay, I guess we're over. The campfire, there wasn't this big kind of, and I don't need this, but I'm used to the big cliffhanger, or there's that one little piece of story that develops at the very end that keeps you coming back for the next one. And maybe they're doing that. Maybe they're just taking the approach of, look, the whole story is that, we've already laid all those earlier on in this episode. And so we got to end it somewhere, and that's just where we did it. But what did you think about the ending? Did it feel abrupt in any way to you?
Well, actually, and to take a step back, I was talking to Stephanie about this today. and we were talking a little bit about, because I had the show on. I was trying to listen to a few things before we came on tonight, and the comment came up about it. These story arcs, right? About 12 episodes, maybe they're 3 story arcs, and I'm just beginning to think that's not a thing, right? I mean, and I'm with you. I think where you're going, that the shape that is very, I think is becoming very, very true. You are basically saying now that we're just writing the script. We're writing 12. We are writing a series. We are writing a one continuous story, and then we just got to chop it up along the way in the best way that it makes sense. There's not necessarily story arcs. They kind of feel like there's natural arcs to it because that's just how storytelling works.
Episode 3 is a good example of that.
Right. Yeah.
The way it ended.
The way it ended was kind of a nice, tidy way to transition to the next stage, right? But if you look at it, it didn't really have to be an arc necessarily. It was just, okay, that's just a really nice wrap up of this first phase of what we're doing. And I think that's what we're seeing here, though, is that there's just one continuous story. We don't go back and recap, when in the actual episode, we don't actually go and regurgitate a lot of what came before it, which I like and I appreciate because it helps your audience just stay on board. And of course, now you can skip intros and skip recaps and things like that. It makes more sense. So I'm actually enjoying that part of it. The abrupt endings, while it does feel a little weird just based on 40 years of watching TV, it doesn't bother me. And actually I think it's okay. Like, I really don't have much of a problem with it. It makes me wanting to watch more, which I guess is it. I don't feel myself getting, I don't know. I'm not getting frustrated by it at the very least, except I'm ready to watch more.
Yeah. Right.
But
and we have the unfortunate, experience of waiting an entire week, but
yeah, right.
We're talking about it and we're loving what we're getting. So I'm with you. Like, at the end of the day, does it really make a difference? Probably not. It just
exactly.
feels weird.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. It takes some getting used to, especially when you have other shows that clearly, if you go watch She-Hulk at the same time, clearly they're episodic. I mean, you get a single episode, and while it's part of a broader narrative overall, it's very much a self-contained little episode. But no, it's not bothering me too much. And I think what we're getting in these episodes is so packed and so good that I think it's just working. I don't want to belabor it too much. I just think it's just working, and I like how it's working. I don't want to mess with the formula. Whatever it is they're doing, as different as it's making me kind of feel and think about some things, it's working for me. So let's just kind of keep moving with it.
So I got the last question I had, the second question, was the lack of flashbacks in this episode. Is that another byproduct of them just writing a story? And when they cut it, they were like, well, because, we may have a flashback that starts off the next episode because, that felt like the right place of it. So was it a conscious effort to say, okay, we're not doing flashbacks in episode 4, or was it just a byproduct of slicing and dicing and, oh, well, there wasn't one and there'll probably be more? Or are we done? Are we going to get more flashbacks?
Well, I think we're definitely going to get more flashbacks. I think what we're, it's not so much like, do we need another one here? Do we need to have it continuously? It's like, where does it make sense? Like, where the character's going? They made a lot of sense early on of like that early journey of, curiosity, being a little bit lost, trying to find your way. And then ends up in this very transitory, part of his life, both with leaving Canary as well as leaving Ferrix, right? So that transition stage.
Right.
We're getting to that here. Now we're starting to learn, okay, we have new relationships that we need to learn, and there's no baggage behind it. There's nothing that you can really infer. So we really need to stay in the now of what he's learning with these folks as they prepare to storm the Imperial garrison. And I think along the same thing with Mon Mothma and with Luthen. They're giving you a flavor of what has come before it and the challenges that they're having and what has been changing in their lives in recent times. The Mon Mothma's comments in particular, it feels like she's being watched. She feels like she's under siege. And so I liked that there was no flashbacks because I didn't think they were necessary. I liked that the name that Andor picked was referenced in the flashback. So you had to pay attention and remember who Clem was. And in order to make that connection, and Clem was, I guess we'll effectively call him his father, maybe, or father figure.
Yeah, adoptive father, I think is
right. Yeah, he was the man who was with Marvel when they kidnapped him, and so, like what I did there, kidnapped him. It wasn't.
Yeah,
he's stolen. Right. Yeah, he was stolen. Anyway, I got to work on my jokes.
Well, the Jedi would be proud too.
They would be. You're right, man. This is great. But no, we didn't need the flashbacks. And again, I think what was also really cool is when they start telling us about the event that's going to give them the cover as they storm the base and try to make the escape. If we remember from the trailers and the teasers, it's like, okay, a lot of this stuff starts making a lot more sense as to what they're doing in various stages of what we were seeing there. And now we have a lot more context, and we've already answered some of our questions early on, that we had a few weeks ago about what is this? What is this thing? We've never seen anything like it. Well, it's because it really doesn't happen that often in this galaxy. It's a rare event anyway. Yeah, and it's more of a religious type of experience. So that's really cool. And I was glad that we got that, and we have something to look forward to probably in 2 or 3 more episodes, but it also gives us an idea about Andor in the uniform. It gives us an idea about maybe why Andor is captured. So there's a lot of things you could start to infer just from the groundwork, the set. But there was really no need to go back and start to retell something from the past until we get to a more relevant point. So I'm okay with pumping the brakes on the flashbacks and taking a break from that until it makes more sense. What about you? Did it bother you at all?
It didn't really bother me. I didn't even realize it until the episode was over. I mean, I was so enthralled. I was, really trying to take everything in. And it wasn't even till the credits were running. I thought, holy crap, wait a minute. There wasn't a flashback. And it's because we've been conditioned, like the Book of Boba Fett, we were expecting the flashback. We were talking about him all the time. Same thing with, the Mandalorian for the most part. I mean, that wasn't every episode that I remember, but,
right.
When it came up, we weren't shocked or surprised. And there was a story that was being told. And it feels like there is a story that's being told. And I would hope they go back and continue to tell that story of him, getting what life is like now with these adoptive parents that have essentially abducted him, and how does that change him, right? All that stuff.
I like the way you think. You're coming around. Well, I think, okay. And the other cool thing is the story about Mimban, right? So the story about Mimban, he spins the story to make him look like a hero, basically, or someone that was in the trenches when the reality was something different. His Last Jedi kind of thing all over again, right? Mm-hmm. But we could have done a flashback to tell that. I like hearing it from the voice of the characters, and then that counterpoint when someone actually knows the truth or something different than what they're telling you, and to see that reaction rather than go through an entire show or an entire movie and then deal with the consequences of all those actions. Okay, well, those are the things that happen. I was like, no, let's just call them out and let's just see let's get their feeling and their impression on it, because it's in that moment of why they're telling you that story that it matters. And that dialogue and that back and forth between Luthen and Andor in that moment was really important.
I was going to say that was the debate when Mandalorian came out. Remember, that was a big debate about whether or not flashbacks were a part of Star Wars. Right, this was something we had never seen before. Should they be doing this kind of thing? And I think we've seen great examples on both sides, to be honest. So
it's
a way, go either way.
Yeah, it's a way you can do it, and it works. But it works either way. I mean, it just depends on what works best in that moment.
Yeah. Hey, before we get in, we're going to get into the actual episode now. I just want to give a quick shout out to Neil Robeson, who is someone who's been on The Basement many times with me on the podcast. He's a really great friend of mine. He was at Disneyland and scored this Andor sweatshirt that I've got on right now.
Oh, nice.
I'm going to turn around, but look, you can see the back, and
I saw it said
walk us through it.
I saw it said like Cassian on there. Cassian Andor. I'll tell you what, I'm going to spotlight you here.
Oh, it's too late. I already switched over.
Oh, okay. Darn.
No, but it's cool. I really like it. It's the only thing I've got that's Andor, but yeah.
I'm digging it.
So thanks, Neil. You're the man. I appreciate it. Okay. You ready to do this?
Yeah, let's jump in.
Okay. So we get, before we even get into the episode, something new. I don't know if anybody caught this. I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. Maybe it's not a big deal. It was to me because we follow the music, but the music was different this time.
It's different every time, actually, just a little bit, but yeah.
Has it? Okay, I didn't catch it. I'll have to go back and watch now. But this was the first time that definitely it had a faster, upbeat tempo to it. Yeah. Still very similar. And what we're talking about is when the Andor logo comes on screen, the music is it's got a faster tempo to it. So
yeah,
I like that idea. I like it, and it'd be cool if it just continues to build and we get And it almost sets up the very first scene, right? The adrenaline that's kind of rushing.
Yeah, it sets the tone for the episode. Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. So I hope we see more of that. But we get right into this whole kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, this is the getaway, right? Thanks to Brasso tying up that one shuttle. Now there's really nobody that can kind of chase them.
Right.
But the first thing that stood out to me was that kick on the hyperdrive.
Yeah.
Because normally, we've seen it before. The Falcon has happened in the Falcon.
Yeah, with R2, right?
With R2, yeah, when he got was it an Empire, right?
Yeah, and we also
everybody kind of.
Yeah, and we've also seen it with, I think, in Solo, actually, when they injected the hyperdrive with the coaxium. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think if we're only going off of what we know, it sounds like he's got some kind of like coaxium turbo booster thing going on there, right?
Yeah, we're not really sure what this Fondor business is that they've got going on here. The answer he gave Andor when he asked him, it didn't make any sense to me.
Yep. Yeah, he said, "What's powering the Fondor Hallcraft?" was the question that was asked. It could be a throwaway line. It could just be red herrings for us to eat up or whatever. But I think that what it does speak to, again, is just the wealth that somebody has, that they have the ability to have the finest of the finest, including experimental, vehicles or ships that people just normal people can't afford, right? He's got the deep pocketbooks here to do something.
It's got all the bells and whistles, and we know it's got some surprises waiting for a little bit later on too.
Yeah. He's getting into Luthen is really trying to sell this idea of, look, you can do so much more, right? And this is a continuation of the selling that he was doing, the solicitation he was doing back on Ferrix. But in that conversation, he does name drop a few things. He talks about, I should say, Andor mentions, the Alliance, the Separatists. He says guerrillas, partisan fronts. It's all the same to him, right? They're all people that are waging war, and he's one of these folks that's just a byproduct of that and has to deal with the repercussions and consequences. Everything, what rolls downhill or downstream. That's him. And so to him, it's all the same thing. But to him, it's all the same. It isn't all the same. It is to him, is what he's saying in that line there.
Right.
But Andor feels it's all useless. Like, this is all pointless.
Right. Yeah. For him, it's about surviving. I mean, we've heard this type of message before from these types of characters where for them, it's just the freedom, right? They want this freedom of life, and they don't want to admit or acknowledge to themselves that really they're not living any kind of freedom. This is like what Bad Batch is dealing with right now too. It's very reminiscent of what we hear Sid saying, to them in the Bad Batch trailer. You're not really.
Or the Marquez sisters.
Yeah, right.
Bring them up.
Yeah, exactly. Another great point. You're not really free. Like, you're just wandering around thinking you're free, but really you're all within the Empire's box, and there's nothing that you're going to be able to do about it. And the right thing to do is to fight against it and break out and try to free the galaxy, and make a difference.
Yeah. You brought this up, but that whole catching him in a lie kind of thing was very interesting, because that's the nice thing about Andor, right?
It felt really powerful when Andor was saying it.
It
right?
did.
I was on Mimban. I was in the trenches for 2 years, and we're like, oh crap. All right, good. Yep. And he's like, nah, no, you weren't. You were a cook.
Yeah. But that speaks to his character too, right? He's able to sell stuff like that, which is going to be invaluable as, as a member of the Rebel Alliance and an undercover person, and all the everything we expect him to be able to do here in just a little bit. But the reality was, he was there 6 months. He was a cook, and he lived because he ran. He fled.
Yeah.
I know from a timeline perspective, this does line him up with being on Mimban with Solo. I doubt they ran into each other. I mean, I know people was saying, "Oh yeah, they probably did," but
right, not that they would have known any difference anyway. They were in the mud and everything else.
Yeah, yep. So yeah, it's he's a good liar, and I think you're going to need that. He's going to need that. I think he's going to show those skills as he continues to infiltrate things, especially with this whole garrison heist that's coming up here very soon. There is that eerie prediction that Luthen makes about saying you'll ultimately die fighting these bastards.
Right.
Yeah, that kind of gave me chills. I was like, oh, well, yeah, he's not wrong. That certainly is going to happen.
Well, I mean, and that's Luthen's point, right? You're going to give it all up at some point anyway.
Anyways, right.
But one way or the other, do you want to do it in a way that actually makes a difference? Do you want to give it? I mean, Luthen says give it all at once, but really what he's saying is, do you actually want to, do something that will actually spark, maybe not in so many words, but spark a true rebellion and really initiate change within the galaxy and show people that there is a way forward, that we can break out of this and in Luthen's respect, when he's talking to Vel a little bit, it's unclear about whether or not when he tells her he thinks things are coming together, how true, like, is that a real comment, right? Because it's moments like this, he's getting the guys that he wants, the guy that he wants in particular with Cassian, but he also knows there's other things not working so well, as we learn later on with Mon Mothma. And so I'm a little unclear. It's hard to tell if Luthen's always telling you the truth too, right? He's kind of dropping truth bombs on Andor, but does he? I mean, he's probably a great liar as well.
Yeah. I mean, he's a propaganda machine. He's got to be in some ways, right? Because they're not, chalking up the wins left and right. They're probably taking a lot of losses right now, and things are really rough, and they're still trying to, get their feet underneath them and figure out what is this going to look like. And so at the same time, he's got to be able to sell this to people and say, no, we really are doing good, right? You need to join. He needs that buy-in. And so he may bend the truth or, not speak in half truths, whatever he needs to.
Yeah. And you've used the word precipice the last couple of weeks. And I think that's when I look at Luthen, I'm starting to believe that's where he thinks they're at. They're in this really pivotal moment here of, if we don't do something, everything is going to fall apart, and we're going to lose this opportunity to make a considerable leap forward. Mm-hmm. We've been working so hard behind the scenes. We've been, little things are working, things are struggle, but now's the time where it has to come together. Otherwise, it will just fall apart. And so I think that's what I'm really curious to see if that way of thinking is what the rest of this season looks like. If it really does feel like it's on it's on his death throes, or it's the beginning of a new day, and just which way is it actually going to fall? Which way is it actually going to tip?
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, like, Luthen is like, the antithesis is going to be somebody like Deidre, right? Yeah. She sees the same things happening. She sees the successes. She sees these smaller victories. She sees them coming together, but in true Empire fashion, they're not listening to her. Same thing with Mosk. Mosk is probably the same way. He can see this happening, but they're not getting the attention that they need. And that, to me, it feels like it's a difference. That's the difference that exists between the rebellion and the Empire. The rebellion, like the Mon Mothmas and the Saw Gerreras and all the other Luthens, they're going to listen to these little guys and say, okay, yeah, that's how the rebellion has to start. Which is why the Empire is going to get there. They're going to be caught here very soon.
Right. Now, a question I had for you. So, I mean, he's baiting Andor with, $200,000 or 200,000 credits, right? For a few days' work is pretty insane.
5 days, yeah.
But my real question is on the mission side. So they're talking about the quarterly payroll for the whole sector. What kind of value what benefit does that bring to the rebellion, or to a rebellion, to have the Imperial sector? Is that to help find other people who can help fund? Is it because I can't imagine cutting off funds for the Empire is really that effective of a strategy, because the money just comes from every which way from the Empire.
Right.
So what do you think the idea behind that is? Or is it just, no, we're actually going to make a really bold move here, but there's got to be something behind it there?
Yeah, I think it's what Luthen says a little bit later, right? I mean, we know he's funding this probably out of his own pocket, right? But he even says later on to Mon Mothma that the funds are starting to dry up. He's like, I don't need people, I need money.
Yeah.
And so this is probably the first of many heists that they're planning, right? They need this money just for operational type stuff, to keep the wheels running, to keep the engine going. They're going to need credits from somewhere, and where better to take it from than the guys that are sacking it to you anyways? That's all their money, right? In their eyes.
I didn't put that together that they were actually stealing money. I thought it sounded like they were looking like for, here's the payroll, here's a list of names, everybody getting paid.
Oh no. Well, and to be fair,
maybe I misunderstood that.
To be fair, I thought the exact same thing on the first watch. I thought, okay, I guess they're going to oust these guys or expose them in some way, right? And that doesn't seem like exciting Star Wars. But it wasn't until the second watching when Andor's talking about flying the shuttle out. Mm-hmm. They talked about hauling the credits over. I mean, They didn't use the word, but they were going to load up everything, all the payroll, and then head out.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I took that more literally. Okay, they're literally picking up money bags of credits, or large cantonments of credits or whatever.
Gotcha. That makes more sense.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's just kind of, they need it to kind of keep funding what they're doing there.
Do you think Andor is really, really believing that Luthen's going to come through with this kind of cash?
No, And I think there's a moment in there where he was. There's a moment in there when he's talking to Vel. Luthen's talking to Vel.
Oh yeah, and he's eyeing the controls there.
He's eyeing the controls, and that little Fondor droid or whatever is taking a look at him, going, "Yes, can I help you?"
Right.
But he's looking at this, going, "This, I'm still not bought in. I don't have the buy-in here, and I can just take the ship. Who knows what it's worth? He's probably got other stuff on there. He'll never catch me. I can just run. You know what I mean? That's all kind of racing through his head in that moment. So
right.
I don't think he has 100% confidence in that.
Yeah, I mean, because Luthen's been flashing some cash. I mean, he just kind of pulled the credits out there on Ferrix. So I mean, he's got some sort of funding behind him. But yeah, it still feels a little too good to be true.
Well, and it's so funny now when you think about it, the perspective of he was trying to get, a couple thousand credits or whatever just to get off world, and Luthen flashed 40K, and he's thinking, my God, I've never seen that much money in my life.
Yeah, now he just
quintupled
it.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, here's 200,000 for 5 days of work. I mean, like,
provided you survive. Yeah, I mean, there's
right,
that whole survival aspect of it.
So yeah, I bet he was thinking I should have asked for 80,000 on that star path.
Right.
Okay, so let's get to Coruscant. There's a very familiar shot that's in just about everything, where they pan over the top of the city skyline, from a top down view, aerial view.
Right.
I've always loved that shot. It happens in everything, movies, television. I was just enamored by the fact they did that with Coruscant. Like, just being able to see that particular shot and see Coruscant in general in the way we did in this episode is just wonderful. I love the fact that we're going back to Coruscant. We're getting these different angles.
Yeah, and it's really cool. The more of the white and gray palettes for the most part. And Luthen's place is a little bit different. Of course, Mon Mothma's car is very different, but everything is a bit washed out. Yeah,
washed out.
Yeah, just a little bit. But I really like that, though, that this sterility that the Empire brings even to something as lively. If you remember Coruscant from episode 2 in particular, everything was so colorful. Everything was different color speeders and everything, it just so vibrant. And now it just feels like it's this very pallid type of environment that the Empire is just completely, I don't know, subjugated. Maybe not subjugated is the right word, but it definitely has had an influence and has this weight, this blanket over even one of the most life-filled cities / planets in the galaxy.
Yeah. It may be, if you're running around in fancy colored cars and stuff, you're just sticking out like a sore thumb. You're putting a target on your back for the Empire to watch you. So conforming to the more neutral palettes and staying, keeping your head down, and that may be part of it as well. They're just kind of pounding that into the people and pounding that into the culture of it.
So ISB. So the Imperial Security Bureau. So we finally get it confirmed, and we go and we see the meeting with the ISB roundtable, all the regents, I guess, the sector owners or the patrol people, the people who are responsible for it. What'd you think? What'd you think of the meeting? What'd you think of the dynamics of what was going on? Was it about what you expected to see from the name is the guy's escaping me, the guy that's leading the whole thing? But the ISB director of sorts, whatever his name is. But
I think it's Paragraz or something like that.
There you go. Yeah. So what'd you think about that? About what you expected, or Empire delivering Empire stuff?
Well, not to bring up the West End game stuff. Pablo Hidalgo posted something on Twitter saying, "Who would have known that Empire?" There was a book that was called the Imperial Source Book. I was going to bring it out for the thing, and we had some technical difficulties. I didn't get the chance to grab it, but there is a source book that came out, and so a lot of that is, I guess, if you played that game and you knew that stuff, it was similar. They pulled a lot of it right out of it, as far as like how the ISB works and some of the ranks and what they're. I think even the Prime Directive, when she's spilling out, like when Dietrich's talking about what we do,
straight out of
the book.
He's
like, that's what it's almost like out of the book. Like that piece is in there, like it's their mission statement, right? Which is awesome. I mean, those are such deep Easter egg and cuts. So from that perspective, I guess it was refreshing and not surprising. But wow, was it surprising? That they would actually pull that out of there, and to see the ISB, because we've read about them many times in books. They've always been out there.
Sure.
But the level of detail of that we're getting of how they operate, and just the inner like team fighting that's going on, right? That trickles down from the highest level. You've got Thrawn and freaking Krennic going back and forth, fighting, vying for, power and wanting the attention and all that. Even down at this level, it's happening too. And that's just part of the culture of the Empire and ultimately what puts them down, puts them in. So it's cool to see that consistency, that this is how this disorganized, dysfunctional power struggle game that's going on with the Empire is even in the ISB.
Yeah, and his speech, his response to Deidre's definition, which was, of course, exactly on the money, but he said it's 100% wrong. Mm-hmm. It was very much reminiscent of the Grand Inquisitor, actually, from Obi-Wan. With a Jedi, it's like an itch. They can't help themselves. And here he's equating it to, this is like an infection. And we're the cure. We're the med pack. We're the ones out there trying to find the cure and find, address the symptoms to find the root cause so we can actually eradicate, all of this. So it was interesting to hear the analogy and the comparison of how that, how he viewed their directive. And then to a little bit of that parallel with what the Grand Inquisitor had with the Jedi.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I like that. I really enjoyed that healthcare provider analogy.
Yeah, healthcare provider. Yeah, that was fantastic.
But here's where I have a problem with it, and I'm 100% sure this was on purpose, right? It was written this way. He's going in, he's saying those things, okay? But then when the moment comes that someone is saying, we have a symptom, we have multiple symptoms happening right now, Deidre, he like brushes it off. Like, sorry, I need data. I need facts. I'm not just going to go off of your gut feeling.
Right.
And on some levels, I understand what he's doing, but that to me seems like that's the arrogance of him, like he's asking people to do this and to be that way, but only as it suits him, only if he agrees with it. So anyway, I find that fascinating that he would get on that soapbox. And then when somebody actually did try to step up and say something, he's like, nah, sorry, we're not going to pursue that. We're not going to follow that.
Well, it was very much like in Empire Strikes Back too, right? When they were fighting about, I thought the hot system was supposed to be devoid of humanoids, and if we chase down every lead that we ever had, it was that same mentality that we see, 15 years later or 10 years later, whatever it might be, when we get to Empire Strikes Back, that same arrogance of like, hey, we have something, we're chasing down every lead, but we don't want to chase every lead down. Let's just be clear. But I mean, I also get the galaxy's a big place, and I think you do want to run your organization off of data. And I think that's where Deidre keeps coming up short, is that she keeps talking about, well, it's a gut feeling. Like she presents the data, but then at the end of the day, she's like, well, it's a gut. But the things that she was successful in doing and that she was saying, though, was that we are seeing trends. Like these are developing. We are starting to see this. But then he starts to get all, he's done his paperwork, but you haven't done your paperwork. Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's silly things like that of like, well, it's really important, but how important is it really important? So he seems to think really highly of her and that she has a career, though, right? It sounds like she comes highly recommended. She's there for a reason, but she hasn't been there long enough to really earn her stripes and earn, kind of get that credibility quite yet.
And she doesn't have the clout that yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The other guy's got 8 sectors and he's been there for a long time and knows what he's doing. He knows the protocol. He follows the rules, follows the way you're supposed to do business. And so you get that credibility, which is of course garbage, but that's bureaucracy at its finest.
Yep. Yeah, no, the red tape, that whole line about the paperwork, man, I've been there. Like, yeah, I've fallen behind on my reports or whatever it is.
Your TPS reports.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of jumped into that scene, but just going back to this one, the MacGuffin was that star path thing, right? And we know that Deidre was over that sector. It looks like it was stolen. Like she seems to be over the sector of Steel. Was it Stalingard? No, what is it called? Steel Guard.
Yeah, Steel Guard. Right.
Excuse me, Steel Guard.
Sounds like it belongs in Thor or something.
Yeah. So that's her connection there. They mentioned that Ryloth is out of control. When is it not?
Yeah, not surprising.
Yeah, not surprising with the Twi'leks there.
Yeah.
Did you catch the conflict on Arvala 6?
Yep.
Arvala 7 was from Mandalorian, right? But so I don't know. Again, these are just little small Easter eggs. They're probably nothing that's going to manifest into anything that's going to impact this story.
And then of course,
the
big one, right? The deployment of resources to Scarif, right?
Yeah. And I have in the show notes. I wonder why, because the construction that's going on there with the Death Star, and
I hear it's a wonderful vacation planet.
it's beautiful.
Beautiful
it really
beaches,
is.
palm trees, white sand beaches. Perfect place for a date.
Yep.
Sunrise, sunset. It's a great place to blow up in the summer.
Okay, let's talk. So we go back to the, I guess the Aldhani airspace, and we get the Cassian using his father's name, Clem, for his phony name as part of the mission. And then there's the Kawadi Signet as down payment. So we talked about this a little bit, but that blue crystal, that Kyber crystal, which is like a half Kyber crystal.
Right. Yeah. It's not a complete Kyber.
Yeah, and I know people have been like, "Oh, this is a Kyber crystal. It's used in it's in lightsabers," and I'm thinking, well, yes and no. So it is a half Kyber, half Sky Stone.
Right.
I don't remember that might be a Legends thing. I couldn't remember, honestly.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look that up.
But we got the name drop. I squealed when he said celebrating the victory against the uprising against the Ricotta Empire.
Mm-hmm.
That is like got Albert written all over it. Like anytime you bring up the Ricotta and what they went to is really cool stuff. And I would never have thought we would have gotten a reference like that. So it was kind of neat to see that.
Can you summarize it like in a sentence of what it was?
What, the Ricotta?
Yeah, just for people who may not be as familiar with it.
Oh, they were an ancient alien race that built star forges to create stars and planets and everything else. But they were hell-bent on enslaving the entire galaxy. I mean, they're worst of the worst people. They're ugly looking, super tall. But yeah, that's kind of where they were. So they're kind of like the precursors, right? There's rumors that, yeah, no, not like that. They actually, I mean, there's rumors that they created, human beings and stars and nebulas and kind of like the, like father, son, and the daughter, right? What are they called now?
Yeah, remember like the Celestials and the
Celestials. Thank you. Yeah. So where all that fits in, I don't know, but that's kind of in a nutshell who they are. But they enslaved a lot of people, and so this was part of this uprising that people stood up against them and took back what belonged to them. So
right,
it was a cool reference. So I guess the crystal itself, is that going to be? Does that play any significant role in here? Is that just something that Luthen is using to give to Andor as a, hey, I trust you, and it really has no value, or he doesn't, really care about it, but it's the perceived value. It's the getting the buy-in from Andor to take that next step for him so that he can find the buy-in on his own. Or is this going to show up later on as kind of some pivotal thing that's used to power up, I don't know, special weapon, or I don't even know what the possibilities could be, honestly, with something like this, because it's never been shown. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, Luthen wore it around his neck, so it's got to be, presumably there's some sort of personal value to it, how he got it or whatever it was. And I think it was also interesting that Andor put it in his pocket. He took it off of his neck and put it in his pocket. Now, presumably that was to hide it, so it didn't seem like he was carrying around something of exceptional value or, something to that effect. But I'm curious.
That's kind of how I took it, but
but I'm curious though. Does it have some sort of intrinsic power to it? Like you were saying, like, can it power something up like we've seen in High Republic? To that effect, that seems like that would be pretty uncommon. But we also know that Luthen has a pretty special ship too. So is it something that could use in an emergency, or is it really, like you said, it's really just more of a personal connection of saying, okay, I'm going to trust you with something that's really important to me. Whether we believe Luthen or not is maybe a different story, but this is how I want that back. It's one of those come back alive type of conversations, and it's just between two macho ego guys. So maybe it's just how they say, "I like you, please come back." We need you type of thing. And I like that. I like that Luthen told Andor that I came for you. Not surprising statement, but in kind of in that same vein that the box would have been great, but I came for you. You're way more valuable than any piece of equipment. And here is the proof of what I'm willing to do and put behind it. Not just making you empty promises of money or potentially empty promises of money, but here's something that has a lot of value, not only, financially, but also personally to me, that I will want to come back, and I will do what it takes in order to make sure that you're supported in whatever way I can. So I think it was more of that type of extension rather than maybe any use to it. But I think it would be really cool if there was some sort of use to it. It's beautiful to look at the very least.
Yeah. And it's now the second Kyber Crystal that we've seen?
Yeah, I believe so.
His mom had one. In the flashback scene, it's kind of dangling there, almost like a dream catcher kind of thing.
Right.
Then there's this one. Might have been a third one, but either way. Is there any chance that Luthen's going to die and not ever get that crystal back?
I mean, that's pretty real. I mean, I don't think Luthen's going to survive out of the season anyway, and so I think this is going to be something that Andor keeps to remember him by. So I think it'll be one of those objects.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too, especially after this episode. Like, we love this character now so much, and he's so complex and he's so cool looking. That usually is a red flag of like, hey, Star Wars is going to kill this guy. So,
yeah, I mean,
so just get ready.
The rest of this episode just made us think he was so much cooler, right? With the way that with the alter ego thing.
Yeah. We get introduced to Vel, and just in general, we'll kind of capsulize all of her teammates. They're all not happy with this last minute change.
Sure.
The dynamic, the relationship between Vel and Luthen, though. Do you think that Luthen, or I guess, what's the question? The question is whether or not does the other team even know about Luthen? And why is that so secret? Is it just that has to be the case so that they can keep, the higher level of secrecy, right? She's the middle person, the intermediary. If they find her, she'll never say anything. They'll kill her, and Luthen gets to kind of move on, right? He can't. The less people that know about him, the better, kind of thing.
I think absolutely true, and I think Bix was the same way, right? I don't want to put you in touch with my contact, and if it wasn't Andor, then who knows that she would have done anything like that at all. And right. I think Vel's the same thing. I mean, she was telling it to Andor, we don't talk about him. No one knows about him. And so I very much believe the rest of the team does not know who is actually, I don't want to say pulling the strings, because I don't want to diminish the character at all of Vel, because I think that she is a strong leader, and he wants her to lead. But at the same time, he's also like, these are the things we have to do. Someone's got to keep you honest too. Even leaders have leaders, or leaders have bosses type of things, right? And so I think this is another one of those cases that he has to keep this arm's length distance, because he's the one that puts the opportunities together, but he can't be connected to any of it. It's just like Mon Mothma. She can be involved, but she has to keep her nose clean, because if she's busted, a lot of things start falling apart. And I think if Luthen is busted, you got to have, and Luthen's willing to get in there and get his hands dirty. And if you have that connection that starts to get lost, then everything starts to fall apart around you, or you lose a big chunk of it, and who knows how long it takes you to recover from that, if it's even possible.
So I'm going to go to the chat, and I apologize. I haven't been going to the chat as often as I should have been. So, but Dante says, when rewatching the episode, their dialogue kind of sounded like she was his daughter. Not definite, but maybe. I kind of picked up on that too on the second rewatching. It's just the way he speaks to her, like,
I need you to lead.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of business professionalism that's going on there, right? But then it felt like it was personal too.
There's a lot of expectation there, yeah, like there would be of a childlike, or
a mentor type of relationship, or a parental type of relationship, right? He wants to see her do better. He wants her to lead, and that sort of thing. That to me makes sense. And, if he really is trying to keep this inner circle as close as possible, as small as possible, somebody like her is, not a risk, because that's his daughter. Right.
Right.
So I think that's a viable, theory as to who she could possibly be.
And there's usually always some sort of history with characters like that, who are willing to completely not obey, but honor everything they say and not betray their trust, and to keep their identity a secret and not lay them out to the rest of the team. And so she probably owes him for something, and very much, and maybe it's a very similar to what Andor is experiencing now with Luthen, and something there. But we'll have to see if we get any kind of backstory there.
Eugene had a question. Will it be a Rogue One ending mission or a Clone Wars ending where everybody makes it? I think there's going to be casualties.
Oh yeah.
At the end of the day, even on this mission, like, I don't know how many of these folks are going to make it out.
Well, I mean, and how many times I got to say it? You know, Andor's there for redundancy. If you lose one, he steps in and does it.
Right.
Even if you lose two, he can fill in for both of them. I mean, so.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it sounds like it's going to be this kid. You know, the bright-eyed, kid that's got the way he.
Oh, you're talking about Nemec?
Yeah, Nemec. Yeah, he just seems like, well, if he's in for the cause, that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
You know, and so it just seems like he's going to be one of the first to go.
Well, from a character development perspective, and I have this at the very end of the show notes, and I'll just speak to it since we're already talking about it. I think some of these people do have to die, and I think some of these people have to give their life up for Andor specifically, right? He has to buy in on the idea that these people are willing to lay down their lives for a cause. He's not there yet, but it's these folks, right? These 7 or 6 other folks now that I think are first going to give them that hope or that glimpse of what it's like and why they do the things they do, right? If someone gives their life for him, he's going to feel like, wow, this is really big, you know?
Well,
or if they die, and just in general, I think he's going to have that same approach.
Right. And he's going to have to get over part of it, because we also know usually what happens with these characters is that someone dies and like, well, why are we even doing this? This is why we shouldn't do it, because the odds are just insurmountable. We're not doing it. And then someone just knocks it into him like, no, he believed or she believed in something.
Right.
And this is why we're doing it, because we can make a difference and we're making progress and we're willing to put everything on the line because this is no way to live. And then their story starts to take root too of what their experience is. Diego Luna, has been in more interviews, of course, recently. And we talk about the fight since he's 6 years old. These other folks have stories similar to that, I'm sure. Different types of stories, but they have those as well,
Right. Let's quickly just talk about the Morlana 1 scene. So we go back to Belvin, I think, or is it Belvin? Belvin,
yeah.
I think it's Belvin. This is what happens when we do this, like less than 48 hours, 36 hours. But Belvin is now there, and it's as we predicted, right? The Empire is all over this thing. They've shut them down now.
Yep.
This whole
idea
that they're in control. We've assumed control.
This is the last straw. They've been screwing up for a while. So yeah.
Yep. But and then he starts. They had to do an action report. I was like, boy, that sounds like every major incident that I've had. I've got to do a post-mortem report on those things. So been there.
Let's do a lessons learned review.
Yeah, let's. All right.
Why don't you like me?
I thought it was hilarious that the chief was like, but
I wasn't even there. Yeah.
I didn't have anything to do with this. That was a pretty good line for him.
Well,
because he was the one that kept saying, we're not doing this. And like I said, he guilty by association. And
then Mosk raising his hand. He's like, seriously?
Right. These guys are like so by the book. They only speak when spoken to and that sort of thing. Hey, but you know what? I guess, they didn't fire him, right? He even says, I'm not letting you go. You're still around. Right. So, and him being Karn.
Yeah. So do you think he was sent to Coruscant? It sounds like he was sent to Coruscant, right? And maybe that's just where he's from. Do you think that's why he ended up going back there?
I think so. He might be on some kind of administrative leave, Yeah,
I didn't know
these types of things happen.
I figured it was something like that, but I didn't know if they had more interviews of him going to go get his after-action review back down at the station type of thing.
Yeah. The way I see this playing out, he's probably down in the dumps. He went back to mom. Mom's going to make him a hot bowl of soup and pat him on the back and say everything's going to be fine. And then he's going to get a knock on the door. And it's going to be Deidre.
Yeah.
Right. I think she's going to come knocking and saying, look, I need you to give me more information. What do you know? And I think she's going to bring him in, like either hire him or whatever. And I think he's going to say, hey, you need to look at Moss too. Like, let's get this guy because he gets it. And
I'm putting together a team.
Exactly. Putting together a team. So I feel like that's where this is going to go. And so he may not be working for that security group anymore. He may be working for the Empire directly as some kind of they made a mention of her administrative staff or something. Like that guy that was saying, "Oh, they spelled Ferrix wrong." Like, I know that guy. He works at my company. When he's looking at the reports, it's like you're not focusing on the more important stuff. But yeah, that guy. Like, it does sound like she's got a staff of a group of people that work for her, right? So I can't see why she wouldn't hire this guy at this point.
Yeah, or I mean, at least use him, because I mean, again, it furthers her agenda. She's got proof, and these are the people that were there. And if she finds that they're dedicated to the cause of sorts, if they're one of those types of folks that would join the Empire or to help out, they're a resource. And again, if it's gonna progress whatever her agenda is, then she's gonna jump all over it.
Right. Let's see. The next we go back to
just real quick. So on that, we had talked about Karn has the makings of a villain, but what do you think about the mix between him and Deidre Mira? I mean, granted, we don't have a lot with Mira yet, but we got a pretty good idea of at least where she's coming from. Is she who's kind of the main villain, or do you think they're going to be a team like we were just talking about, or do you think she's kind of the main villain of this series so far? Like, what's your just guessing if you're looking forward in your crystal ball here?
I think it's going to be Karn.
Okay.
Because I think for Karn, it's personal now, right? Because he's been humiliated. They tied him up. They left him for dead, kind of thing at one point. So I think it's very personal for him. For Deidre, it's not personal yet. It may get there, but really, she's just doing her job. She's got a lead now on a case that's probably been under her, this a thorn in her side for a number of years, and she just wants to bring that to a resolution. And she knows that this guy over here is probably responsible for it. But so it's a different kind of. So I think they're both going to work. They've got different motivations as to why they want to bring Andor in. But for Karn, I think it's much more personal. And to that end, I think he's probably going to be the more vile kind of person, the more of the antagonist. But I think they're all three of them, honestly, are going to play a big part in that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, so there was the quick Aldhani thing. They go back there. Really, we've already talked about a lot of that. The only other piece that stood out there was, the 7 people against a garrison. Right. That's our first pulling back of the curtain of like, wow, this is yet another suicide mission. And there's so many of these from the Rebel Alliance. Every episode of Rebels is a suicide mission. It's 5 people, maybe a couple of others trying to do the impossible, right? But yeah, so nothing there other than to say that, wow, again, I don't know how they're going to pull this off.
Yeah, and again, it's another facility that who on earth would even think about doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no escape. I mean, and they had it all down there. It's 52 clicks, and plus you have 9 minutes, and then the TIE fighters catch up to you, and you're toast. So from the Empire's perspective, how would you know that? And it's the details. It's the culture part of the things that the Rebellion's always been able to pick up on that says, well, here's how we would make that work and turn the impossible into something still, while very dangerous, and the odds are maybe not what you would want them to be, but at least it's possible now. There's a way, and as Andor says, there's your cover. All right, so that's what we get. But just a pause though. What do you think about all the cinematography? Because we've talked about this. The landscapes. We had the TIE fighters roaring over, overhead as they came through, as they're traversing the highlands and the lowlands. What'd you think of it? Was it everything you had kind of hoped it was going to be?
Yeah, it's for lack of a better word, it's cinematic. It feels very cinematic. It does not at times. And this is true of a lot of premium television today.
Sure, yeah,
right?
They all feel big. Yeah.
They feel big, and this one feels big in so many ways. But yeah, I mean, some of these shots that we're getting are, again, it's movie quality stuff that you would expect to see on premium television or on the big screen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've enjoyed all of it. I love the onset stuff, like the on-site, on location type stuff. It's really hard to see where so many of these shots I know are not. I say that, but are not the volume,
Right. But we also know they can't all be 100% real either. I mean, you don't really have TIE fighters going across, and the Coruscant stuff, I imagine there's some sort of, they've got to be using something, right? Whether it's green screen or the volume or something. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, it's still all the landscape and everything was definitely, it felt very real and felt very boots on the ground. So I really enjoyed that. But I know it was something that we had talked a lot about going into it. So I just wanted to see if that was hitting expectations for you.
Not to call him out, but Hard Countered has just joined our chat.
Oh, now we can get started.
No, well, I want to know his thought. Like when you get a chance, throw something in there. I kind of want to, because he's a good friend, first off. But I know sometimes he doesn't always like the Disney stuff that's coming out. And I'm just curious as to how he's taking the show and how this is resonating with him. The fact that he's here either says he's bored or has nothing planned, or he actually is enjoying it, which I hope is the third one. So,
well, he wants to make sure I start driving tomorrow morning to go see him. So.
Fair, he just wants his name called out.
Right.
It's probably all of the above. All right. Anyways, just kidding, man. Love you, guy. Okay, so let's talk about Luthen. Because for me, again, this was the standout moment. The transformation. I mean, we talked about it in the very first couple episodes about Stellan Skarsgård's performance, just how he does in general. Like every role he's always good in. But man, there's like stuff going on here. It's so transformational. Like it's crazy. And I know it's just an actor getting into his role and playing his part. But
I like that we see the behind the scenes of him getting himself like an actor, like getting himself prepared in the background to play the part.
It's more than that. It's more than just his voice, right? Mm-hmm. The way he speaks, the inflection, his tone, he changes all of that.
Yeah, body
he does
language.
The physical stuff, right? The mannerisms change. The way his gait. Look at the way when Luthen's walking, it's very stern, very commanding. When he's as this other character, this other Luthen, it's very graceful, very pompous, right? High royalty, kind of a very rich kind of thing. It's just so amazing. I love the fact that he does that and he goes to that extent. But he has to. I mean, it gives you the sense of importance for him to maintain his cover because he's so pivotal. He's so critical in this role.
Yeah, it was good that these weren't flashbacks when we were originally speculating, were these beforehand? No, it really is just a wig. It is a front. It's his business of sorts. I think we had someone in the chat earlier was saying maybe some of the artifacts, maybe they weren't real or something like that. I have a feeling they probably are all real because you want to put forth a legitimate front. Everyone's got the legitimate, even the mobsters have legitimate businesses, right? And so, but I like though that we do get a very different character. But what I really loved about it was you could really feel the weight of how much energy it takes for him to put into that character. Yeah. And that's not him. And it is very difficult for him to continue doing. You just see how tired he really is. While he looks grumpy and tired already, now Dante put how perverse in there. I don't know if this is about Luthen specifically or not, about how he feels about this, this persona or not, but I could see where that might be applicable actually, where he's like, oh my gosh, I hate this character. I hate this guy, but it's what
you're saying. Luthen is saying, I hate being this person. I think that's true.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly
a level of that.
Yeah. He certainly looks like it, cause as soon as he gets back in the back, he turns it off. And it is down to business. And this is who I truly am. This is what I truly believe. This is why I am here. Not to sell trinkets and knickknacks from the past and to make idle conversation about history of Chandrilla.
Yeah. And just on the comment about, I don't really like the idea that those items aren't real. Because if they're not real, then it undermines the whole front.
Right.
And plus, like, number one, they got to explain where he's getting money from, and they could always just go, it's something else and we're not going to tell you. But why go through the effort of showing all these things and making a big deal about how much money he has and all that if it's not real? It doesn't make any sense to me. Number two, the other second reason why is if that's the case, if they're not real, then and we can talk about this a little bit later, but he's got stuff in there that I don't understand how the Empire is allowing to have it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so then you could argue, okay, well, it's not real. So the Empire just like, oh, he's just a nobody and he's got fake stuff. Well, he's not making money on fake stuff. I mean,
right.
I don't see that happening either,
Yeah, I mean, you'd get called out for being a fraud really, really quickly.
Exactly.
And there's a part of me that likes the whole Indiana Jones, the rare antiquities, type of atmosphere. It's just kind of fun. It just reminds me of, what was it? Last Crusade, when he goes to Walter Donovan's office.
Yep. All right, let's move on from Luthen. Let's talk about we get some background on Aldhani. It's a distribution hub for the galaxy. I think that makes sense.
Yep.
I loved all of the colonization stuff that's happening, right? The Empire coming in, running the people out. I think this was filmed in Scotland.
Mhm.
These particular scenes, which is a parallel to the British, right? Coming in and running all the people off the Highlands and running them down there and trying to take over that area and they did for a number of years. So that whole colonization of the Empire and again is predictable and what we would expect, which is great. We get introduced to the whole team. So there's Skeen, Terramin, who's the AK-47 guy, Nemec, who's the sleepyhead, and then we've got Cinta
Mhm.
as well. What did you think about the team themselves? Like, I know you mentioned they probably all have their own backstories. Do you think we're going to get everybody's backstory at this campfire here, or does it even matter for us?
I don't know if it matters. It's a lot of characters try to give a lot of backstory on, but I think we'll get a little bit of something with them. And that does usually come out like in these moments when they're, about to infiltrate the base, or maybe they're waiting idly for something to happen, So I think there's some things we'll probably get some smaller pieces out of all of that, but yeah, they all have the story, and it would be interesting to get some flavor of it. Do we need to belabor it or get all of the details and write a new book about it or short story about it? Probably not.
Yeah.
But again, if one of them is to die, it would be nice to know a little bit about them, about what was so important about them, or what made them somewhat special. But again, it's a large enough team where you're not going to be able to do it in any kind of detail, I don't think. So my expectations are pretty low. And again, it's more about Andor's story. So what makes the most sense for him to connect with, and what's going to make the most impact to him is we're the ones that we'll get.
Well,
So
I think Vel.
I think Vel will probably get something from her at the very least, right? And maybe from Nemec.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more powerful for Andor too, knowing nothing about them. Like if they do go and save his life, or he sees them die for this cause, and he knows nothing about them, that's maybe more powerful than knowing the why. So I think there's something to be said there. Skeen catches Nemec sleeping on the job.
Yeah.
He does a quick name drop of of course, we all know who Saul Guerrera is, but he also mentions Garvish and Mossy. I don't think those are other people that I remember, and I need to go back to Rebel Rising because there are a few people that again are kind of coming and going through Saul's teams where he's working with Saul. Those names didn't sound familiar to me, but it does speak to the larger narrative of there are a lot of other Saul Guerreras out there.
Sure.
There are a lot of other splinter cells that are popping up everywhere. It's not just 5 that we talk about in Star Wars. There's tens of 5s or hundreds. Who knows how many there are? But
Well, and again, it goes to the how do they treat that type of activity? What's the discipline look like on their teams? He'd have your head on spike, for sleeping. You're no good to him in that kind of way, and this speaks to the severity of how far they're willing to push things and what they expect, and really they don't really care about their people a whole lot.
Right. Steph says, I don't care about their stories. Honestly, I don't want to get attached to people who will probably die. Well, welcome to Star Wars, Steph.
Yep.
Glad you can make it.
Yeah, we hope you're enjoying Andor.
Hey, you might want to watch Rogue One. That's kind of a cool one. Real good love story there. We talked about, I think we've already talked about Karn. The only thing I have on here is that neighbor, that nosy ass neighbor in the back. That was
Right.
kind of like they shoot her
What
off.
are you watching at? What are you looking at?
I don't know. That just tickles me pink. I really did enjoy that. So what is his backstory? Do you have any thoughts on what's going on there with him? And why did his mom slap him?
Oh, he probably left home, and now that he's back, she's probably pissed, but she's really happy that he's back. But he probably left and followed his dream or whatever it was, and she just got mad. So I don't know. At this point, I'm not really connecting with Karn like in this moment. Like I kind of liked him where he was before, but he's diminished quite a bit, and that's partly the point. But
right.
So I want to see how he gets built back up, and I don't really care about family drama. If I wanted family drama, I just go talk to my family, And so, yeah, or I just go watch Luke and Leia and Vader and all of them. But no, so I think, Sky's saying he didn't call her. That's probably what it was.
I was going to say, Sky's right. I think it's what it is. Like, she's been emailing, she's been calling, wondering where he's at. And then he just shows up. Yeah, he's going to get a slap and then a hug.
That's right.
Slap and a kiss.
Gotta put Shiny Boy back in his place. But, so we'll see. Yeah, I don't know that I really care right now.
Dante says this is an old person's home for the rich people, and she's mad he doesn't visit. Okay. Apple Brook as the neighbor. Okay, these are good.
This is why we have the best listeners on the planet, by the way.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's the simple answer is, like you said, he did something and he's just not been in contact with her. She's probably been worried sick, because he's off doing whatever. Mm-hmm. I do think you're right. I think this is part of his story arc, right? If you think about where he was at the top, something really bad happened. He's bottomed out. He's going to be given a second chance coming up now. And, where that goes, I don't know, but that's kind of how things roll in Star Wars and storytelling.
Right.
There was when we go back to Aldhani now, that little shot she gave him. So Cinta gives him a shot.
Yeah, some sort of medicine. It was green though, kind of greenish.
Okay, so in Legends, in Old Republic times, I think I've talked about Koltov before. Koltov is green. Mm-hmm. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, maybe it's a Kolto shot, because she's like, oh, we got to keep the good. We're trying to, keep the good stuff.
Yeah, they keep the pain meds for true emergencies, not for people they don't know, basically.
Yeah.
He looks like a tough guy. Could be all right.
He does. You talked about Nemec a little bit.
Yeah,
he does seem like...
Yeah, he's young. I mean, and just seems to be committed to the cause. And he's clearly wears his emotions on his sleeves. He's also very trusting, because I think everybody understands where they're at. They're undermanned. They know they're short at least one person. And they have one who's kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, the lieutenant that works down at the garrison, who's a turncoat. And so they know the odds are stacked against them. They know they need help. But they're still very proud. And they're also just they've probably all been burned before too. And so to bring someone in this late just doesn't make any sense. But again, Nemec, maybe his youthful naivete of saying, well, as long as he believes in the cause, and I got this vibe about him. We really connected when he nodded at me for half a second. Kids.
Right.
Yeah, kids.
Right.
When the rest of them were like, dude, go back to sleep.
Well, and since he's connected, like he's the one that's believing in Andor, again, that's usually the red flag of, oh, that's the one that's going to die, right?
Yep. Give him a red shirt.
Yep. Get Albert some Mednog.
There you go. Oh, is that what they called it? Is that what he actually called it?
Yeah, he called it Mednog when he told him to take a swig of that.
It was just booze.
That's what I thought it was. I thought it was just booze. I didn't know there was any actually healing properties. Something to dull the pain. All right, let's get into like a really good stuff. Let's get into the Coruscant scene when Mon Mothma arrives, who, my goodness, Genevieve O'Reilly is just kind of killing it. Again, all the actors are really killing it, in my opinion. They're putting in some great performances on levels of, Star Wars acting that we haven't had. I mean, we get bits and pieces of it, right? But it's been a while since we've had this quality of acting, and she's no exception.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess the big takeaway here is we'll get into the Easter eggs too in just a second, but the big takeaway is Mon Mothma has got the Empire all over her, and she's starting to feel that creep of spies everywhere, right? They've replaced her driver. They're replacing people on the Senate. Anywhere and everywhere they can put their spies to watch the senators or anybody else that could be conspiring against them. They're going to do it. And it's becoming very, very tight for her to operate as this kind of, Rebel Alliance entrepreneur.
She's the financier, it sounds like, for the most part. And Luthen, it's kind of interesting. As much as money as we think Luthen has, apparently his funds, I think you said this at the beginning of the show, his funds seem to either be exhausted or he called it foraging. We can't forage forever. But to her point, it's becoming very, very difficult with all of the attention that she has now. it's very, very difficult for her to move money around to. It's something that they can get to. And that's what they're watching. I mean, that's what, the Emperor's not dumb. And he's going to see and understand like where I don't necessarily care about her. I want to care about everything else that she's actually funding and who her connections are, because that's the part I've really got to root out. Sure, I can cut off the money, but I want to find out all of the other ones that need to be eradicated in the meantime.
Mm.
And that's now becoming, and you can feel the stress on her. I mean, she's becoming paranoid of sorts, and probably rightfully so, right? I mean, and we get this scene later on with her husband that now you're like, okay, well, you can't even trust her husband, maybe.
Yeah. She said, I feel under siege.
Yeah.
Because it's coming from all directions now, right? It's not just one aspect or one facet of her life. It's every aspect. It's permeated every aspect of her life. And, what was interesting was Luthen is like, look, if you can't come through with us, I've got to go somewhere else.
Right.
That's that whole real conversation that they have there in a little bit. And she says the money's there. It's just getting very dangerous. I can't pull funds the way the way I used to. I don't know if we're going to get into the money laundering that's happening. I think it's fascinating. I'd love to see how she's doing that, right? Even if it's just a slight mention, I'd love to know how are they funneling money? Is it coming from other donations, or I don't even know how the politics work in Star Wars, but I actually would like to see how that's happening.
Yeah,
it's got to be a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. Yeah, it seems less likely that we'll get into those details, but again, it's that tension between her and Luthen of, hey, I will deliver from Mon Mothma's standpoint, but he's also like, I need it promptly. I need to be able to I need that flexibility to go do the things when the time is right and be able to keep funding this thing and keep moving it forward. And waiting is just making things harder and making it worse, right? And it's going to dwindle our supplies, our ability to feed the people. It will just feed the people out there doing things just to make sure that they can survive to do the mission. But she's also, she knows her neck's on the line. She knows no one else has as much to lose. Like, she will be the first one to lose everything, and probably up to and including her life, if she were actually to have any kind of hard concrete evidence come against her.
Right.
And if she falls, the dominoes fall all around her really quickly in a variety of ways, whether they're routed by the Empire and they're rounded up, or if the supply lines dry up and then they just end up getting, picked off one by one, or they scatter and the whole thing just falls apart. So she's very realistic about what her part is in all of this, but she wants to make sure Luthen's not on his high horse saying, while you're out there doing this other part of it, which is exceptionally important, don't diminish what my contribution is here, or what I'm putting at risk, or what I'm sacrificing here in the process as well. So she kind of puts him in his place a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think she does too. They have a very dynamic relationship for sure. She makes a comment at the very end there. You kind of brought her up, her being, she's putting her neck on the line. She says, I'm going to be the first to fail if we bring in this other person, right? She talks about bringing another person, and Luthen's against it, into the inner circle.
What do you think that might be? Any speculation?
Well, I thought of the Dave Filoni inner circle first and foremost, right? There's always that joke about Dave's inner circle.
Yeah, and the tree, the trust tree.
The trust tree, yeah.
I'm building a moat around that. I might even build
right.
another moat around the moat.
Yep. I'm sure that wasn't related, but that's where my mind went in it first.
Well, she does have trees in her apartment.
But she says if things go wrong, she's going to be the first to fail, right? Mm. So my heart says, I wish it's going to be somebody like Ahsoka or somebody really cool like that, right? Even if they don't show it, or just the mention of, she's trying to bring in Fulcrum, and maybe Ahsoka's not ready. And Cassian, we know Cassian, I think, is Fulcrum before she is, right? But my mind says, if she's the first to fall, then it's got to be somebody very close to her at the same level, right? And so the maybe unceremonious, non-exciting person is somebody like Bail Organa.
Would it surprise you if Bail Organa was not already in the loop, though?
Well, I'm with you too. Because
they've been at it for 15 years now, right?
Yes, and so that would lead you to think that they are both working independently And maybe that's been fine, and they've decided now this is the time that they have to come together and work as a team or whatever. But I don't know. As much as I feel like it's going to be Bail Organa, to me, in my head, at least headcanon, they've already been working together. Like they are in cahoots, and they've been in cahoots for a number of years.
Yeah, that would be really surprising if he was only now coming into the inner circle. That to me, that would be a little confusing and surprising in that regard, just alone. But we'll have to see. I didn't know if there were any suspects you had out there that you thought maybe were, because I had a hard time thinking like, who could this actually be that would show up in the series?
I mean, maybe the Syndulas or like Dodonna. We haven't seen him or heard from him yet.
Right.
It could be any one of those people. But the fact that they talked about it, didn't say it, and she said it's somebody close, or she's going to be the first to fall, that means there's probably some exposure there to her because of her role or her relationship with this person.
Sure.
That feels like it's going to be Organa. Like it or hate it.
Right, but she needs support. I mean, they need resources, and they need someone to take the heat off so that they can take some of that pressure off. And again, this is about expanding your goals too. Doing it in the small operation. And Luthen, I would think of, I mean, he's nervous about it. I get that part. But again, in order to continue the cause, you've got to expand operations, and you've got to bring more people in. And sure, it's risky, but you have to, who can you trust more than Mon Mothma, right? She probably has a hard time trusting anyone more than Luthen or folks like Luthen or like a Bail Organa or someone like that. So it's you've got to take those leaps of faith every once in a while.
Yeah, I don't think it's a Saul Guerrero. I mean, it could be too. I mean, maybe it's Saul.
Maybe, but Luthen seems to know Saul Guerrero already, is my guess.
Right. But does he keep him at arm's length, right? Is he like a Vel, or is he like those 7 people right now? And she really wants, like, okay, we need him in there. We need him closer because, we can do more with him when he's closer rather than keeping him at arm's length or keeping him separated.
Yeah, well, and again, I think it's in what capacity is she trying to bring someone in? Is it more on her side, the political arena, the funding, the financing? Or is it like you said, more like a Saw, like someone on the ground? And maybe this does establish the relationship with Mon Mothma and Saw, of where that, what they thought was going to be a useful, mutually beneficial relationship ends up being, no, we are not on the same page about how we go about doing any of this stuff. And maybe that's how that goes. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. It's not clear which avenue she's going. To me, it seems like it would be more of the political and financing arena for her, but who knows? Maybe she feels like there needs to be more than just Luthen out there doing this.
Well, and there's one more line. Once they go back out into the shop area, he's got that double message that he sends her, and he says, it's a daring choice, but I trust you'll have the courage to turn back should it be a bit much.
Right.
And so Saul Guerrero fits that line for me.
Yeah.
Because to bring him into the inner circle means that he's going to, he's got his reputation. They know what they're getting with Saul Guerrero. And so if things get hairy and he starts jeopardizing that inner circle because he's out there being sloppy or going to extremes or whatever, he's saying, look, you need to get rid of him. You need to ditch him. And I think it would be interesting also because in Rogue One, when they bring up Saul Guerrero, when Cassian's there and they're talking about Saul Guerrero, Mon Mothma gives a look over. I forget who it was. She's looking at someone when they mention his name, and then she talks about him being an extremist, but they had to cut ties with him.
Right. And
so it would play into this line of like, okay, I brought him in, and then she does show the courage a little bit later to get rid of him because he's too much of a wild card and too much of a maverick, I guess.
So where do you think? Yeah, no, you're fine, man. So where do you think as she leaves, she gets the on loan artifact. They've had their meeting. She takes off. Where do you think the next step is for Luthen? Because we don't come back to Luthen at all. Him and Clea kind of go in the back and presumably start doing, making the plans for what's next. So what do you think is next for him? Do you think it is going out and pursuing like a Saw Gerrera? Do you think that's what's next on his agenda, or is it to go back and support Vel and Andor and all of them several days later? Like which path do you think is next for him, or is he hanging tight and he's sitting there in Coruscant for a while, making sure he's present?
My headcanon is he's got other groups. Like, it's not just these guys, right? He's
Sure.
probably going to go check in on some of the other initiatives. He'll probably bounce for this next episode. I don't unless we it's 3 episodes in this arc, right? So yeah, he'll probably come back in the third one if it's an arc. But I feel like he'd probably come back in the 3rd episode of this arc, right? So this next episode, wouldn't expect to see him. He comes back a little bit later and rescues him or helps him in some way at the last minute kind of thing or whatever. But I don't know that we'll see him much because now they've laid the lines. Now we've got to talk about Mon Mothma. I hope we get that dinner scene coming up.
I hope so. I want to see Slime more. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That dinner scene is going to be like off the chain.
Yeah. And Slime Moore is force sensitive too, which is what makes her character very interesting. And I think some of it with Mon Mothma's husband, like that, it's really unclear whose side he's really on. They seem to have a very contentious relationship, but he's kind of touting it as like, oh, we're all old college buddies, basically. But it's clear though what it means to her. And I was really, I know we've kind of skipped a little bit here, but it was really powerful. And these are the people stopping me at every turn when I try to do something good. They just cut off all these shipping lanes. So many people are going to starve just because they want to be cruel or they want to prove a point against me and do everything they can against whatever we're trying to fight for, whatever we're trying to put forth. That's really just for the good of the galaxy, good of the Republic, if you will.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool to see that impassioned speech. And she's like, just don't do this ever again. I was like, whoa. Mm-hmm. All right. We know who's in charge.
Well, when we get to that scene, I'll talk about the line that stood out for me. There was something she said that really like resonated with me. But where I was going was they've got to tell this. Hopefully they tell that dinner scene. We've got the Karn story that they've got to pick up.
Yeah.
Potentially a flashback story of some sort. We've got to pick up. We've got to go back to the garrison planning and invasion, right? So there's a lot going on. Where does Luthen fit in that? I don't know. I think he just takes a backseat for a little bit so we can get to some of the other stuff.
Yeah, because I think it's going to take us the next 2 episodes to resolve the garrison siege.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things leading up to it, and we know that the escape route and all of that. So I imagine that's going to take place over the next couple of episodes.
Yep. Okay, so quickly on the Easter eggs, all that stuff. I had called it Luthen's Magical Shop of Wonders because he's just got all this stuff in there. We've already kind of talked about why does the Empire allow him to have all this stuff. Any thoughts as to why, like, the holocrons stick out to me?
Yeah, some of it might not be. Well, you kind of wonder if it's actually it doesn't work.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and so some of it, but again, the weapon, what was that? That looked like one of the weapons from the Knights of Ren, didn't it?
Oh yeah. One of the guys carries something very similar, but he said it was like
it was what was it? Ancient.
No, it was what do you call them? My God, I'm drawing a blank on the name now. Excuse me.
Yeah, I can't remember what they all were, but
somebody will throw it in the chat here in a second. It was on the stinking Clone Wars at Arcs. They did several of them on them. Anyways, I think the Sith Stalker armor is another one that I felt like.
Yeah.
I don't see why Palpatine wouldn't have snatched that thing up already.
Oh, there you go, the Utapauan battle.
That's it, Utapauan. There was the Twi'lek, the Kalikori, the Wookiee helmet, the Wookiee instrument, the Mando armor, the Mandalorian armor. It's not Mando armor, it's Mandalorian armor. A lot of them wore that stuff. I know I didn't catch this. I saw it somewhere else, but like somebody had posted a picture on Twitter of the Indy's whip. Frozen in carbonite, and the stones from Temple of Doom.
Mm-hmm.
Right, those were in the background. There was a Gungan shield. There was the Keldor mask that you could barely see, but it's in that episode as well. But all this stuff is really fun, and I love that they put them in there. But it wasn't like, I mean, it makes sense. Like, it just made sense that these things would be there.
Right. And again, it's just kind of a cornucopia. It's just a visual fun, where's Waldo type of experiment.
Yeah. There might be other ones. I might have missed some stuff on there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, no. I was going to ask you, what was your favorite? Because my favorite was the one I didn't even freaking mention, which is the Mortis tablet.
Yeah.
The tablets for the family, right?
Mhm.
We saw that in Star Wars Rebels. But seeing that, like, again, that's another piece that I'm like, okay, they're fun things in there. I'm not going to put too much weight in the fact that they're in there because at the end of the day, I just don't see how Palpatine of the Empire would allow him to have that as well. Like, there's history there. These are relics in terms of, as far as I'm concerned. But the point is, he's got all of these things. They sell for tons of money. They're worth a lot to different people,
Right.
especially something like Beskar. We know what the value of that is now and how rare that is at this point. So this is where he's getting a lot of his money and funding from.
Exactly. And again, it's a legitimate storefront business. And so that he would have rare artifacts now. Some of them are just fun things, and we shouldn't put too much weight into it. And I didn't really spend a whole lot of time looking at it because I know I'd go down that rabbit hole. And so I just saved myself the trouble. And when I came here, I was like, okay, Albert will fill me out on all the things I need to know about what I didn't catch. And then I'll go watch some other YouTube video where they actually break everything down after we've had this show. So I'm not tempted to go and waste all of our time by doing 45 minutes of artifacts.
I haven't been feeling the best, so I haven't really gone out and looked. Those are the stuff that I saw that people posted on Twitter or I saw myself. So there's probably more. I just don't know what they are.
Right.
Okay. Let's talk about Lieutenant Gorn just quickly. He's the guy. Now, does he work for the Empire? Do you think, or is he somebody who's an undercover Manchurian candidate kind of person?
I think he's a turncoat. I think he was with the Empire and then left him because he's been stationed there for 7 years.
True. Yeah.
And so that if you've been there that long, it seems like he probably came there under the pretense of serving the Empire, and things have over time just maybe degraded, which is a similar story for a lot of people. But so that's kind of how I took that one. I took that one a bit more at face value rather than being an undercover agent. Cause I don't know, slipping into the Empire at a lieutenant level or at an officer type of level seems more difficult, but what do I know? And again, the Empire is not exactly the well-oiled machine that we expect it to be, especially out on the fringe.
Yep. Okay. We get back to Mon Mothma's place. Very lavish. I love the design of everything. The trees in there, little bonsai trees they had going on.
Her wardrobe's pretty fantastic too.
Yeah. That whole place, the whole getup was really elegant and extravagant. But can she have any bigger douche of a husband? Honestly, like, I mean, how in the world
even
did
his
this
hair
happen? Yeah, he's got that little man bun thing going on in the background or in the back there. And there's probably some sad story about they used to be fun and they used to love each other, and life happened and things got in the way, and he became the husband of a powerful senator and all the fame that goes with it, and just went his own way and dove into his own selfish things that he never had. Right? I mean, there's a whole story there,
Sure.
Unfortunately, which I thought is fascinating. But
I mean,
it's
really scary too, because I mean, she probably has to look at him as one of her biggest every day, every moment type of risks. So not only when you go to work do you have everybody feeling like you're watching her, now when she goes home, he's connected to all of these people and he's inviting them into her home, and that these are the people she knows are out to get her. And so they're exploiting that relationship, whether he is doing it willfully or not, or knowingly or not, doesn't matter. But she just feels like, again, under siege, literally in every aspect of her life, even her personal life. She can't even go to bed without feeling like she's being watched.
Mm-hmm. There's so many things in this dialogue that are really cool. That kind of speak to the relationship, because he's like, hey, I told you about this. We talked about it.
Yeah.
I put it on the calendar.
I put it in your diary.
And she's like, he's like, don't you remember me? And she says, I remember you wearing me down.
Right.
Can't even get it out. Because, I don't know. I've been there, right? Someone's just worn you down with this whole, I gotta have it. We're going to do this. And you're like, fine, whatever. Just stop talking to me about this. I don't agree with it. I don't like it, but you're going to do it anyways. So just go do it. Right.
Right.
Wearing her down to that point.
But of course, didn't give her the details about who he wanted to invite. We're just having some old college buddies over for a few beers, a few drinks.
Yeah, he called his regimental mate. So I wonder if this guy actually was in the military. What was he in the military? If that was the case, I don't know. But I also think the Empire knows he has that relationship, right? Mm-hmm. They've exploited that.
Absolutely.
If the spies are everywhere, then they're planning people and saying, hey, go meet up with this guy, right? If they can get in with her husband, then that's just one more person they're close to. Another set of people that have eyes and ears and connections to Mon Mothma. So it just becomes harder and harder to do, work on all the other stuff.
Right.
We talked about Ars Angor. He was in the Tarkin novel. I don't remember much about him, honestly.
Yeah.
Sly Moore, we've already talked about. That's the most interesting one because she's also, not only is she in cahoots with the Emperor, not only is she force sensitive, but she knows who the Emperor is. She knows he's a Sith Lord.
Right.
So, wow. Talk about the devil coming to dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
He's trying to, there's a moment there where she kind of downplays her concern too. Like, I think she realizes, like, I'm letting on too much. I'm coming across too emotional and saying, like, I have a problem with this. Because that, to me, I think she's thinking that that's going to be a red flag. And if that gets back to these people, they're going to start asking questions. Why was she so upset about us coming to dinner? That doesn't make any sense. What's the big deal? So she kind of downplays it a little bit. She's like, I wasn't really that concerned about it.
Right.
Excuse me. But, outside of the other line I have in the show notes, which says, WTF, is she with him? Why is she with him?
Yeah.
The line that stood out to me is, she says, if you make me pay attention, I will, and you won't be happy. In other words, I am going to bring this whole party to a crashing halt because she's going to start commenting and listening in on what they're talking about and calling these people out and just
make a scene. Yep.
Make a scene. She's going to wreck this party.
Right.
And that was pretty powerful. Like, holy crap. Like, it sounded like he did kind of back down.
And then he's like, must everything be boring and sad? It's like the most self-centered thing, but he's also
man baby.
Exactly. And it's like, well, yeah. Do you realize what they're doing? She already laid it all out there for him, but he's got this very lavish lifestyle. He lives on a completely different, he's just spoiled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I hate that dude.
Yeah, what a jerk.
Well, so the question I think I have is, at some point, is he going to rat her out? Like, if their relationship is where it's at, I can see a scenario where he's going to pick, do I pick this person who I'm no longer in love with? She's got a target on her head, or do I go with this fun lifestyle that the Empire can provide for me and I'm going to be taken care of? So why not? I have a feeling he's going to betray her. I do.
It seems like it's very, very real possibility and maybe high probability that could happen. I think it just depends on where it goes. And again, we know that, he pops up later on in the other trailers and teasers that we've seen, with some of these dinner parties and whatnot. So we know that there is more to come, and how she behaves. And as he watches her, we're going to get a much better idea of how much he really lets on, if he really is working against her already or not. But
yeah,
it seems very likely that would be it. Now, that would be really interesting with the tie into Rebels, like we talked about kind of in the, what to watch to get ready for Andor. And when she's outed and she, makes the big statement against the Emperor, it would be interesting if something in this realm, starts to lay the groundwork for what really happened, back then. And then that's how things started to really fall apart.
Yeah. The story that we don't have is right. The story that we don't have is the story that her husband was a key player in outing her the way it happened.
Exactly.
Yeah. That would be kind of sad. When we go back to Aldhani, we got a lot of backstory, a lot of backfill on what's going on this planet, right? So, Empire came in 13 years ago. They liberated Alkenzi Air Base. That air base is like 50 clicks away, however far that is. There was a place called the Valley of Caverns, which the Empire then took on for themselves as kind of a storage place. So that's how it became kind of this storage planet that was, a distribution center.
Mm-hmm.
Dammed up the river. They know they're going to get away in a Rano, which is kind of like this box of a vehicle.
Right.
Other than that whole scene where Cassian's like, this is not going to work.
It's not really flying, but I can do it. Yeah.
yeah. I wouldn't really call it flying. I thought that was great. They only keep 40 men of the garrison because, I mean, who would be stupid enough to invade a garrison on this planet? There's no local threat. They've already ran those guys off. Right?
It's all open fields, basically. They've fortified.
It's target practice.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to fortify this thing.
But the cool one was the thing that we were like scratching our heads over as part of the trailer, which was the whole Nazma Brawny event. And I love that we had this like magical tale of the eye of Aldhani given to us by the Lieutenant Gorn. And then we were given like the real scientific reason of it right afterwards, which sounds like this planet as part of its orbital, as part of its orbit at some point every 3 years goes through some kind of a meteor storm or what was it?
Like crystals.
Crystals.
Yeah. Which is really cool because what you see from the ground is beautiful. But when you're up in it, it is like the sky is on fire. And this is what we're seeing. And this is what we're seeing in the trailers, of course.
So I really think we're going to see, the Getaway, their cover is this field, right?
Right.
As crazy as it sounds, they're going to navigate this box into the sky while all these explosions are going off. And I think that's going to be awesome to see, right? And we already it looks like we see Cassian when he says buckle up or hang on or whatever.
Yep.
we were speculating, okay, well now, this sounds like there's other people with them. Well, it's these people. I think that's kind of clear and evident. But just the visuals of TIE fighters getting blown up by these things is going to be awesome because I have a feeling they're going to do it.
Yeah.
It's going to be like an asteroid field. They're going to be navigating. These things are going to combust. They're going to explode, and it's going to take out TIE fighters and whatever else is in the air. So I think we're in for a kind of a cool, visual, spectacular type of scene when it happens, which would be awesome because I think some of the feedback, right or wrong, has been that there's not been a lot of action in the series. In particular, in this episode, there was no action. Like there was nothing that really happened in this episode itself. So it's cool that they're leading up to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be visually just insane. And so we'll have to see if it's next episode or if it's the one after that for the big escape. If this is going to be the infiltration and then we'll end before we get to the big escape or after something's happened. So we'll have to see if this is next week or the week after. But man, I'm really looking forward to this. And again, it was really cool seeing TIE fighters come across the landscape when they were walking back to camp. And now I'm just all the more excited to see some TIE fighters actually get in on the action. And again, is this, we know that Luthen brings his ship back to help clear a path and, with TIE fighters and stuff like that too. So is this related to that to help them break free and get away, or are those completely unrelated to where he doesn't kind of come in and help, maybe not save the day, but finishes off getting that path to get them the safety, or are those completely unrelated? So we'll have to see exactly how that comes to pass. But I like the lore of this. This is just really cool of where it came back to. And again, the sadness of, it used to be, tens of thousands or whatever it was. And now it's a bit sad, I think is what Gore says, or Guard. What was his name? Yeah, Lieutenant Gorn, right? So, but yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how this part plays out.
Now you got me thinking about that. Like if the ISB showed up with an Imperial Star Destroyer right outside orbit as this was going on, and Luthen, to tie those scenes together, right? I think you're making a good point. So Luthen would be somebody who helps him turn the tide, right? At least just get away where they wouldn't have had a chance had he not been there.
Right.
But that would then mean
that he'd be exposed. There's a whole rabbit trail there. Yeah.
Well, this next episode, that means that Deidre would have to go to Karn, and there would have to be something that we're not thinking of.
Yeah, what would lead them to this backwater planet?
To Andor, right, of that planet.
Yeah, and
because no one knows.
That seems like a lot to get there.
No, but I like the idea. I like thinking about like how that would happen. I don't know. I got to think about that because nobody knows that Luthen took Andor, right? He didn't mention it to anybody except Bix.
Yeah, but she was safe. Yeah, we'll have to see because it does seem like they go back to Ferrix. And so what happens on
Yes.
Ferrix when they storm? Because we know they have death troopers out there. We know they've got some riots and things like that start to happen. So there's a lot that happens in between. So I have a feeling they're probably maybe not related, but I kind of like the idea that, again, that's how you bring Luthen back in to join back up with them towards the end of that siege, or to make sure they break free. But and again, if you're looking for a way to Luthen to die, that would be a way too. Of him sacrificing.
It's unclear to me how far he's going to live, because now that we've seen where this is being set up, where it's going, it looks like a lot of what we got in the trailers is like the first 6 episodes.
Yeah, a lot more than what I thought,
half.
actually. Yeah.
So,
yep. So we're about to get to a lot of brand new, fresh content here pretty soon. Things we haven't seen in the trailers.
All right, we get the final scene on Coruscant. Deidre's calling them rebels. And I heard they used the word alliance before too.
Yeah.
I don't put a lot of weight into them being like, we know they haven't come together as an alliance. Right. So, there might be groups that have come together and that's created a small alliance, but they're not talking about the Rebel Alliance. That would completely break canon, because that doesn't happen until Rebels. 4 more years from now, 5 more years from now, whenever that is.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the pattern that she's seeing. She's being denied. He throws up the, Belvin's doing his quarterly reports, but you haven't been doing yours, and you could be, you have a lot of potential to do so much more. The fact that he's focusing on that crap is just so frustrating, because if you've ever worked in the corporate environment, there are people like that, but it's just an indication of where the Empire is. As powerful as they are, they're so tied up in their own bureaucracy and arrogance that this is why they failed,
Right. But he does give her compliments though on how many people that she's thrown in jail.
Yeah, right.
They have a quota apparently for how many people they lock up, which is interesting.
Well,
and again,
is
that setting up maybe Andor doesn't make it off the planet. He is captured, and that's how we get him back to Coruscant or wherever these clean rooms are that we see him, staging an escape type of thing with. I mean, it would make a lot of sense, and that's maybe how, maybe that's how Deidre starts to get just kind of right place, right time type of thing too, of where they become aware of each other, or even with what's his name. Oh, Mr. McHappy that was trying to chase him before on Ferrix.
Mr. Happy?
I forgot his name.
Karn Mosk?
Karn. Yeah, Karn.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where that comes around. But anyway, so we'll have to see how that all fits together here pretty soon. But it was interesting, that they have lockup quotas. Only the Empire has lockup quotas.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's just another indicator of you're focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah.
I mean, that looks all great on paper and,
Well, but it does speak to, the Major's idea of routing out not the symptoms, but trying to identify the actual health problem.
True.
And so
lock them all up.
Yeah, you find where you think it is, you take them off the board, right? And however that is, and you keep squeezing, and if you don't get to the right person, you keep squeezing until you get to the right source, so you actually find where the disease is at, and then then they're the cure, right? So
right, and that doesn't happen in the real world here, Russia, but it does.
But it does.
Okay, the final scene is kind of where it all ends. I mean, there's not a whole lot here. I love the fact that he's like, "Can I eat my food?"
They're all just watching him all the time. Yeah, but then Cassian's kind of a jerk face though too. I'm sorry, Clem. Clem's kind of a jerk too. He's just always like he has a problem with all of them, and so when they stare at him, but then they gave him a lot of homework. I mean, they gave him a lot of stuff. Here, we need you to go learn a language. We need you to do the research. We need you to here's the plans. Here's the maps. You got all this tonight, but I guess you can check your bandage and eat some food and then get to work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They're all staring. I'm like, hurry up, dude. You got.
Yeah, if you sleep, you sleep. Otherwise, you sleep and you're dead.
So, are they leaving in the morning? Is that when this whole thing starts?
Like they keep saying 3 days, but yeah, it seems like they have this next day.
Why?
But maybe they're going to start running drills or something like that. And they're just trying to get him up.
No, you're right.
Trying to get him up to speed really quickly.
Okay, that makes sense.
And because that seems to be the major rub with all these folks is like, we're 3 days out and now we're bringing someone else in that we have to get up to speed, get them trained up. Everything that we've been doing, is it even the same, or do we have to change things now? Like everything feels off. And this is the concern she had. She was telling to Luthen is that this is going to tear the team apart because it's kind of shown that strain, but it does seem like they all still want to be there and they all trust Vel, even if it's a bit strained and tough right now.
Yep. Yeah, and the stages of teen development. You bring in another person, you start all over again.
Yep, so. You do. But overall, man, again, this is a really great episode. We heard a lot of great things about episode 4 being this is a huge payoff. It's a really big thing. This was not what I expected. When I hear those comments, I had a very different, formula planning. Whatever was popping in my head was not this, but I loved this. And what we got here, I thought was fantastic. It was really gripping and engaging. And it was so good. And like you said before, there was no action really whatsoever in it. It was just good storytelling, good character development. The pacing was still, while slow, I liked the pacing. The pacing is working for this show and for what we need it to be. And you're not getting bored as you watch it. You're still very engaged throughout. I mean, that's just a testament to the writing and the acting, I think.
Yeah, and not to plug the episode, but Sunday night.
We
didn't talk about this.
You want me to plug it for you?
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I know. So Sunday, so we apologize we weren't able to do Tuesday with the State of Star Wars, but we are going to do it on Sunday, and we are actually going to have a special guest. So Albert is going to be joined by Gus from Triad of the Force. So our great friends over there. Gus has been generous. Albert's been on the Triad of the Force show. We wanted to have Gus come over there and spend some time with us too. So Albert and Gus are going to talk through Star Wars, and that's going to be on Sunday night. We've already got it scheduled up on the website, cantinacast.com, as well as it's on the YouTube. So please go check it out. All the social media stuff will come out this weekend starting Saturday, so you won't be able to miss it. We've got links in there for everything, so you can go out there and check it out. It is a Patreon episode, but the live stream is open for everybody. So 9 o'clock on Sunday evening, that's the Central Times. And you won't want to miss that. And if there's anything you want to tout specifically about what you guys are going to talk about, I know you've got a whole slate of things that are interesting to you that you'd like to go through. But have you guys focused a little bit more on what you're hoping to get out of that one?
Nope, I cover it all.
Nice.
But no, the reason I brought it up was because the idea we're going to talk a lot about Andor, and we're going to talk a lot about. I think the first couple questions I have in there are like, what, who is Star Wars for? We're going to talk about the stuff that George Lucas talked about back in 1977, which is the same stuff he talked about in 1999 about, is it for 12-year-olds, and just kind of like, my personal thoughts and his thoughts on how that's changed, and is it really for everybody these days? I've heard a lot of people say that this doesn't feel like Star Wars. I'm going to dig into that and kind of give my thoughts on what does that really mean? What are they really saying when they say this doesn't feel like Star Wars? So those are kind of the topics, and we're going to get into like novelization, like anything published. We're going to talk about books, movies, video games, just run through it. Now, some of these will probably spend more time than others.
Sure.
But yeah, it'll be a lot of fun to kind of,
get
my current read of Star Wars.
Exactly. And if y'all aren't familiar with Triad of the Force, Gus, man, super awesome guy, really engaging guy to talk to. He's from Puerto Rico, and so he has a very different perspective than what we do. So it's fantastic to get that different voice on here as well. So I think you're all really going to enjoy that one. So I highly encourage you to check that one out on Sunday. And again, if you're not able to catch it live, it will be in the Patreon feed at the After Dark tier, so after the fact. So I encourage you to go check that out too.
Okay.
KTNcast.com/Patreon.
Yeah, you're right. I think we covered everything. So we got that on Sunday. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to do on Tuesday. If we're going to do a deeper dive, or depending on how Albert's feeling, we might just come back on Thursday. So we'll play that one a little bit by ear here, but you will be back next Thursday to break down episode 5 of Andor and see where this tale takes us. Yep. All right. Anything else before we get out of here?
I think that's it, my friend.
You want to do shout outs?
Oh, yes. Let's do shout outs. Again, a huge thank you to all of our Patreon members. As usual, we appreciate all your support. And in the chat tonight, again, we had a really great crowd. Steph, Dale, Jonathan, Rob, Kathy, Sky, Dante, Eugene, Lauren, Brian Rodenbaugh, Risk, Dante, hard countered. If I missed anyone, my sincerest apologies. We've had people lurking in the background as well. So thank you everyone for showing up and for all the discussion in the chat. We had a really great discussion. We didn't highlight as much of it because we're a little out of sorts today. I apologize for the late start, but really appreciate everyone coming out. And we hope if you are listening, you'll come out and visit us, cantinacast.com/YouTube, and participate in the live stream and some live chat back and forth. And we like to highlight your comments whenever we can.
Yep. Okay. Bye. We'll see you in a couple days.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.